Imagine dedicating years to someone's growth, only to have them turn their back on you once they reach the top. This was the bitter reality for Gu Yanxi. Following her reincarnation, Li Shimin went back to her high school days, certain that her path to glory was already set. In her past existence, she had risen from the depths of poverty to become a dominant CEO. That achievement had instilled in her a misplaced arrogance, causing her to lose sight of her true origins. Upon her return, her priority wasn't her studies. Instead, she marched directly to Gu Yanxi, clutching another boy's hand. Skipping any pleasantries, she gave him a haughty smirk. From now on, you will deposit 50 million into Jia Hao's account monthly. If you comply, I might think about becoming your girlfriend. A heavy silence fell over the room. The other students stared at Li Shimin, convinced she had lost her mind. She was known as one of the most destitute girls in the school. Without charity, she could barely buy a meal. Yet here she was, acting entitled to millions. Gu Yanxi burst into laughter. Have you lost your senses? Without my family's help, you'd be starving. Why on earth would I fund another man's lifestyle? I'm certainly not his parent. Li Shimin's expression soured instantly. Jia Hao, who was by her side, moved to her defense. He lashed out at Gu Yanxi for mocking the poor, arguing that the wealthy were obligated to assist those in need. Gu Yanxi remained unmoved. If wealth implies I must provide for everyone, why aren't you handling your own issues rather than relying on me? This retort silenced the entire class. Jia Hao attempted to play the martyr, claiming he would prefer homelessness over seeing Li Shimin compromise her pride for him. While the onlookers found it touching, Gu Yanxi found it pathetic, as he recalled the events of their former lives. Li Shimin was under the impression that Jia Hao had given up everything for her by donating a kidney. That act alone had made her believe he was her soulmate. However, the reality was much darker. Gu Yanxi had actually paid a massive sum to secure that organ. Jia Hao was no saint. He had even extorted more cash just before the surgery. Once she found success, Li Shimin had funneled corporate money to buy him mansions and sports cars, even paying off his father's gambling losses. Gu Yanxi had endured it all back then. But this time, the cycle would break. Without a word, he took out his phone and terminated every scholarship fund linked to her name. Li Shimin just smirked in response. Keep your charity, she said, still acting with the poise of the mogul she used to be. Gu Yanxi calmly pulled up years of financial logs. Every cent spent on her tuition and daily life was there. He stared her down and said, "You possess any shred of integrity, reimburse me for everything." He even reduced the total to 30 million to simplify things. Rather than being intimidated, Li Shimin chuckled. Only 30 million? In 15 years, I will be wealthier than you can fathom. She warned him that turning her down now would be his biggest regret. Yet, Gu Yanxi saw her bravado as laughable. Without the backing of his family in either life, she would never have reached the peak. Right after that, he suspended every remaining scholarship fund and presented her with a repayment contract. Li Shimin furiously pressed her thumbprint onto the paper before shooting him a venomous look. Don't you forget this day. She then grabbed Jia Hao's hand and stormed off. Gu Yanxi sighed as he watched their retreating figures. In his past life, he had spent years fostering her success, only to produce a person who met his kindness with cold betrayal. Sadly, that encounter was merely the beginning. Later that afternoon, Gu Yanxi's driver arrived to collect him after classes. Just as he reached the vehicle, a sudden shove from behind nearly knocked him off his feet. When he turned, Li Shimin had already ushered Jia Hao into the back of his luxury sedan and climbed in after him. She nonchalantly commanded the driver to head for the hospital, acting as if the expensive car were her own property. The driver didn't protest. Instead, he silently locked the doors and called the police, reporting that 2 intruders had forced their way into a private car and refused to exit. Within moments, the situation had completely escalated. Even while confined in the vehicle, Li Shimin maintained the air of a powerful executive, demanding total obedience from everyone. She was oblivious to the fact that a harsh reality check was coming. Inside the locked sedan, Jia Hao's face grew pale with stress. Seeing his distress, Li Shimin's heart pained. She took a deep breath and addressed Gu Yanxi as if offering a grand concession. Fine, How did they end up in the psychiatric department? He then clarified, yesterday evening, Li Shimin posted a message to the class group chat asserting she'd become the wealthiest woman in China one day. She vowed that anyone lending her 1,000 yuan today would get a 100-fold return later. The post seemed even more preposterous than those notorious internet frauds. Gu Yanxi almost gagged on his beverage. He was preparing to depart when the class representative held him back. Don't go yet. Things are about to get entertaining. Just as expected, Li Shimin lifted a glass of lemonade, swirling it slowly as if it were a pricey vintage wine. She then looked at the 10-yuan plate of stir-fried noodles on the table, her expression full of loathing. How do you have the nerve to serve such pathetic food? Even a street cat would turn its nose up at something this low-grade. Jiahao quickly chimed in. Shimin definitely deserves better. However, you haven't eaten all day. You need to have at least a few bites. Li Shimin smirked coldly. I would prefer to go hungry than consume this trash. The vendor behind the stall slammed his spatula down on the metal counter. You used a coupon for the most basic noodles, demanded free extra veggies, and now you're whining. Either eat the food or get out. Li Shimin rose from her seat in a rage. Do you have any idea who I am? With just one call, I could make this little stand vanish. Jiahao rushed to soothe. Winning the championship every single year, coupled with her exceptional academic performance, she soon drew the interest of a real estate firm's chairman. Her homeroom teacher promptly escorted her over. Chairman Jiang, this student possesses the talent to enter one of the nation's most prestigious universities. You certainly won't regret sponsoring her. The executive nodded approvingly. Excellent. Starting today, our firm will grant you a monthly allowance of 6,000 yuan until your university graduation. The nearby faculty members beamed. For a typical student, such a sum was remarkably liberal. However, Li Shimin scowled with dissatisfaction. Just 6,000? Do you take me for a beggar? The chairman's expression immediately hardened. The current market is struggling. 6,000 yuan is plenty to handle a student's fundamental costs of living. Crossing her arms, Li Shimin shook her head dismissively. I might accept assistance if forced, but this figure is trivial. My ambition is to establish an elite global research group which requires massive capital. I am not like those students who depend on handouts. I aim to head the planet's premier tech corporation. If you lack the funds for that, give your offer to someone else. She turned and departed before anyone could utter a word. President Jiang's face clouded with rage. The teacher rushed to catch up. Lie Chumin, pausing, she glanced back with an air of superiority. Don't bring me any more companies that lack prospects. Any potential sponsor must have a net worth exceeding the GU Group. I will vet every candidate myself. If they fail to meet my standards, I won't give them a second thought. Her blunt insolence deeply insulted the businessman. Despite the frantic apologies from the principal and staff, the damage was done. On the spot, President Jiang declared he would never fund another student from this institution. The fallout was instantaneous. A pair of innocent twins, cared for by their aging grandparents, were stripped of their chance for financial aid. The two boys huddled in a corner, weeping in despair. Gu Yanxi approached them calmly. Don't fret, the GU Group will take care of you both. The siblings looked up, stunned. Is that true? He gave a kind smile. 8,000 yuan per month. Is that sufficient? The twins shook their heads vigorously. That is way too much. We only need about 2,000 monthly. With eyes full of tears, they knelt down in appreciation. Thank you. We promise to pay back your generosity once we finish school. Observing them, Gu Yanxi felt a sense of relief. Some people still valued true gratitude. Following the conclusion of the sports festival, the class gathered for a group dinner. Predictably, Li Shimin and Jiahao arrived, even though they hadn't contributed a dime. Without paying anything, Li Shimin marched directly to the head of the table. She scanned the room with clear revulsion. The decor is ancient. The service is abysmal. This food isn't even fit for consumption. A heavy silence fell over the table. Just hours before, she had insulted a major benefactor, ruined opportunities for her classmates, and sabotaged the relay race because Jiahao had a minor scratch from the long jump. Rather than completing the lap, she had dropped the baton to rush him to the medical office while intimidating the school physician into providing instant treatment. At this moment, she was disparaging the exact establishment where their party was being held. Not a single person wished to talk to her. Used to receiving the royal treatment, Li Shimin found being overlooked absolutely intolerable. Grabbing the juice she had been sipping, she intentionally emptied it over the steamed fish sitting in the middle of the table. Her fingers drummed against the table with annoyance. Who picked this low-budget place? She was well aware that this venue was owned by the Gu family. Her goal was to goad Gu Yanxi on purpose. The class teacher managed a strained grin. The other students find this place wonderful. What is it that you find so objectionable? Li Shimin gave a frigid chuckle. Wonderful? None of you have ever set foot in a genuine luxury restaurant. That is why you are so easily impressed by this place. Jiahao quickly nodded along. Certain individuals are simply meant to remain impoverished. Shimin, do not bother bickering with them. They will never reach our status. The monitor's expression flushed with rage. Right as he was on the verge of an outburst, Gu Yanxi calmly restrained him with a smile. Naturally, our soon-to-be wealthiest woman wouldn't deign to divide the check with commoners. Because she held everyone in such contempt, he resolved to grant her precisely what she desired. He snatched up the receipt and set it right before her. Given that you are fated to be the nation's richest woman, you surely won't object to covering today's dinner, will you? Li Shimin peeked at the amount, 4,000 yuan. Her face froze for a split second. Gu Yancy put on a show of shock. What? Surely 4,000 yuan is nothing more than loose change for a person of your caliber. She knew right away he was making fun of her, yet with so many peers looking on, she was unable to retreat. Following a lengthy pause, she snatched the check. Fine, I will settle it. She then hauled Jiahao out of the room. Almost 30 minutes passed before the pair came back, but a change was evident. The jade necklace Jiahao constantly wore was now missing. As soon as Li Shimin took her seat, she directed a hateful look at Gu Yancy, as though the situation were entirely his fault. Gu Yancy caught on instantly. To preserve their dignity, they must have pawned Jiahao's family treasure to cover the cost of the meal. Before another word could be uttered, the door to the private room flew open. A group of intimidating men marched in. They seized Jiahao without notice and attempted to haul him out. You punk, your old man is in debt to us. If that money isn't paid back today, you're coming along. Jiahao's complexion went white. That is my father's problem. Why does it involve me? I am only a student. How could I possibly have that much cash? Stricken with fear, he gripped the table leg for dear life. Some of the boys moved to assist him, but the criminals quickly brandished weapons. The room went still. Their leader produced Jiahao's ID and shook it in his face. Your father fled the hospital earlier today. He left a message saying his son would take care of the debt. Silence blanketed the room. As the men got ready to haul him off, Jiahao yelled out, "Hold on, I can pay you back. My girlfriend is going to be the wealthiest woman in the country." She swore she would help me clear the debt. The thugs gazed at. The men erupted in laughter. The wealthiest woman in China. Do you take us for fools? In a panic, Jiahao gestured toward the restroom door. It's the truth. Just look. Everyone's gaze followed his finger. At that very moment, Li Shimin stepped back into the room. She was dressed in inexpensive clothing worth less than a few hundred yuan. From head to toe, she appeared to be a typical, impoverished student. Yet, she carried herself with the authority of a global corporation's chairwoman. Without a hint of hesitation, she moved forward and asked, "What is the amount he owes?" The leader gave a mocking smirk. "Over 1 million yuan. Li Shimin gave a composed nod. "I will pay it back." The room went quiet once more. Then she requested a pen and paper from a nearby waiter. Like a seasoned business executive finalizing a major deal, she quickly drafted an IOU. 15 years from today, I, Li Shimin, shall repay this debt with 10 times the interest. The entire room stared at her, completely incredulous. Even the debt collectors were stunned. For a moment, no one knew if they were looking at a genius or someone who had lost their mind. The collector glared at the handwritten note, then looked back at Li Shimin as if she were utterly insane. One of them balled up the paper and threw it to the floor. "You think we're going to wait 15 years? We want the cash right now." Li Shimin's expression finally shifted. Instead of arguing with the men, she suddenly walked straight toward Gu Yancy. Without any warning, she grabbed his arm and leaned in as though she were about to kiss him. Gu Yancy's eyes went wide. Disgusted, he violently shoved her away. Then a slap echoed. His hand landed squarely across her face. The room fell silent instantly. Holding her reddened cheek, Li Shimin stared at him in shock. "What are you pretending for? In our past life, you loved me more than anything else." Gu Yancy looked at her with an icy gaze. "That was 3 years in the future. Right now, we are nothing more than strangers." For the first time, Li Shimin looked genuinely surprised. Then a slow smile spread across her face. "So you have been reborn as well." It didn't actually shock her. After all, the three of them had died together in that explosion. If she and Jiahao had come back with their memories, there was no reason Gu Yancy couldn't have done the same. In that case, she said with confidence, "There is no need to waste any more time. Give me the money now. In 15 years, I will guarantee you a life of unimaginable wealth. But if you refuse, you should remember exactly what happened after you crossed me in our previous life." Gu Yancy couldn't help but laugh. "The only reason you became the richest woman before was because my family cleared every obstacle in your path. Without us, you wouldn't have even reached the starting line." He turned around and walked away without looking back. Behind him, Li Shimin screamed at the top of her lungs, "Gu Yancy, one day you will regret today's decision." Later, the class monitor told him what had occurred after his departure. Li Shimin had arrogantly claimed she was personally acquainted with the boss of the loan sharks. The collectors treated her like a total lunatic. If the class monitor hadn't called the police in time, the two of them might have been tossed into the river before dawn. Not long after, the class monitor gathered everyone. "I have news. Li Shimin and Jiahao have officially dropped out of school. They said they are entering the business world." Gu Yancy. It came as no surprise. Several days prior, Li Shimin had already begun bombarding him with intimidating texts. She vowed to ruin his public image and even questioned if he felt remorse for the decisions he had made in his past life. "Had you simply accepted Jiahao, you would still be married to the wealthiest woman in China. Gu Yanxi sent back a single, cold response. You intended to maintain a lover while remaining my wife. Why do you believe you're entitled to anything? Li Shimin fell silent after that, but Gu Yanxi was certain this was far from over. During his former life, she had embezzled corporate funds to purchase high-end villas and exotic cars for Jiahao. She even went as far as settling his father's debts from gambling. By the time Gu Yanxi discovered the truth, she was 4 months along with Jiahao's baby. Back then, Jiahao harbored ambitions of taking over his entire life. When Gu Yanxi finally faced them, neither showed a shred of remorse. It was only when legal counsel declared that Li Shimin would be divorced with 0 assets that Jiahao began to spiral. He covertly opened the gas valves in the residence and forced Gu Yanxi inside, intending to eliminate him and destroy the proof. However, right before the blast, Gu Yanxi seized them both. If his life was ending, he would drag them down with him. This shared tragedy resulted in all 3 being reincarnated. Initially, he hoped to avoid them entirely in this new life. Yet, as Li Shimin persisted in being his adversary, he saw no reason to offer her any leniency. 3 days afterward, Gu Yanji joined his father at a business incubator to review potential startups. Upon seeing him, Li Shiming wore a self-satisfied grin. She immediately tucked her business plan behind her and declared arrogantly, I would partner with anyone before I'd work with the Gu Group. Give up on your dreams, Gu Yanji. Gu Yanji just smirked privately. She was entirely mistaken about his presence there. His goal wasn't to fund her project, he was looking for a different person. In the past, the individual his father truly respected wasn't Li Shiming, but a brilliant senior student named Lin Yi. His father had once envisioned them marrying so that Lin Yi could eventually take the helm of the Gu Group. However, Gu Yanji had been blinded by his devotion to Li Shiming back then. Due to that error, Lin Yi never rose above the rank of vice president. While the public lauded Li Shiming as a genius CEO, Lin Yi was the one actually making every critical executive decision in the background. Gu Yanji was determined not to let history repeat itself. He intended to ensure Lin Yi finally obtained the credit she was owed. Following a brief 30-minute pitch, his father reached a verdict. We will invest. The session concluded with enthusiastic clapping. Shortly after, Lin Yi came up to Gu Yanji directly. I appreciate it. Without your recommendation, Chairman Gu likely wouldn't have attended. Gu Yanji smiled and shook his head. Your own talent secured this. I merely provided the opportunity. It didn't take long for Lin Yi to validate everyone's expectations. Her remarkable skills soon established her as his father's most trusted advisor. In the meantime, Gu Yanji gained admission to a prestigious national university. Once there, he formally became part of Lin Yi's research group. Suddenly, Ji Hao appeared on the campus grounds. Searching for him, his expression radiated arrogance. Shiming has already obtained funding. It might only be 2 million yuan for now, but that is merely the start. Within a decade, she will return to the summit. Folding her arms, Li Shiming glared down at Gu Yanji. You've had your time as the spouse of the wealthiest woman. Now, it is his opportunity. Gu Yanji offered a serene smile. I truly wish the two of you the best of luck. But before Li Shiming could savor her victory, devastating news struck. That supposed investment was nothing but a fraudulent scheme. The backers had enticed her with empty vows, stripping her of every asset. Her patents were offloaded for pennies. Her commercial concepts were plundered. Even the online platform she had painstakingly developed faced constant cyber attacks. Following a series of devastating setbacks, Li Shimin finally reached her breaking point. She hurried to Gu Yanxi's college and intercepted him. It was your doing. You are undermining me in secret because you're terrified I'll regain my power and retaliate. Before Gu Yanxi could respond, Lin Yi moved to shield him. Miss Li, I have analyzed your circumstances. While you possess ability, skill by itself is insufficient. The corporate landscape is much more ruthless than you realize. Li Shimin's features contorted in anger. Who do you think you are? In my past life, you were merely my underling. Don't act like you can educate me. Move aside. Lin Yi's gaze grew icy as she gripped Li Shimin's wrist tightly. If you bother Yanxi one more time, I will not be so lenient. She then personally saw Li Shimin off the university grounds. As he watched her depart, Gu Yanxi had an epiphany. Without the Gu family's direction or Li's backing, Li Shimin was no business prodigy. She was just a person who confused the hard work of others with her own natural gifts. Driven by greed and panic, Li Shimin eventually entered into what she thought was a lucrative enterprise. She was unaware that it was actually a massive criminal syndicate. After spotting something odd, the class monitor alerted the authorities. 3 months later, Li Shimin was taken into custody. Shortly after, the police reached out to Gu Yanxi for help with their probe. They specifically requested to review the texts Li Shimin had sent him over the last few months. Gu Yanxi unlocked his device and passed it to them. The detective looked through the messages, which grew increasingly frantic as time went on. Gu Yancy, loan me 1 million. I will overlook everything. Just provide 30 million more. My firm is on the verge of success. When I return to the top, I swear I won't come after you. Weeks later, the requested sum plummeted. 300,000 will do. Then, just 100,000. Finally, 10,000. I'm begging you. Even the officers found it hard to suppress their laughter. The disparity between her haughty warnings and her pathetic pleas was staggering. As Gu Yanzi was about to depart, an officer called him back. There is one more thing. Li Shimin is being uncooperative. She claims she will only confess if she is allowed to see you. Gu Yanzi's initial instinct was to decline, but he eventually consented, thinking his cooperation might help dismantle the fraud ring and save others from being victimized. Inside the holding cell, Li Shimin no longer resembled the woman she had once portrayed wearing. Bound by handcuffs, she sat in silence, her gaze fixed on the floor. It took a long moment for her to speak after Gu Yanzi appeared. Finally, she let out a soft murmur, "I'm sorry." Following the officer's lead, Gu Yanzi questioned her in a level voice. "Didn't you suspect something was off when you first entered that organization?" Li Shimin's lips curled into a pained smile. "I did. I suspected it from the start, but I refused to face the truth. I couldn't bear the thought that the influential CEO I used to be had fallen so low." Her head dipped lower. "It's only now that the reality has set in. I am nothing. I can't achieve anything without your help. My arrogance prevented me from confessing that. I was desperate to prove everyone wrong. I wanted to demonstrate to the world, and especially to you, that my triumphs were my own. Instead, each setback only confirmed the truth." Silent tears began to track down her cheeks. "The fact is, I've always loved you. In our past life, no matter how much I accomplished, I never felt like I earned your respect. It always seemed like you were pulling the strings behind the scenes. As a woman, I craved someone who would look up to me. Jaha provided that. His constant praise made me feel superior to everyone else. I became hooked on his empty compliments." She raised her tear-filled eyes to meet Gu Yanzi's. "When you discovered us, I truly wanted to repair our marriage. I wanted a fresh start. Yet, you were adamant about the divorce. The explosion was Jaha's doing, not mine. I never wished for your death. After our rebirth, I only remained by his side because of the bitterness I felt toward you. I kept wondering, if your love was real, why did you take me to the grave with you?" Silence filled the room. Gu Yanzi's face remained an unreadable mask as he listened. Once she stopped talking, he rose from his seat. "Is that all? I have responsibilities to attend to. Ling Yi's latest research team is understaffed, and I can't afford to waste time here." Without a second glance, he turned to leave. Just as Gu Yanzi approached the exit, the door burst open and a man stormed into the room. It was Jia Hao, his eyes bloodshot with fury. He roughly shoved Gu Yanzi out of the way and leveled a finger at Li Shimin. "You're a liar. You told me I was the one you loved. I saved your life. You'd be dead right now if I hadn't given you my kidney. You swore we would be together forever. You promised to make enough money to clear my father's debts. But you just vanished after stealing the deed to my mother's property. Where did the money go? Give it back to me." Li Shimin let out a harsh, mocking laugh. "Your kidney? Gu Yanzi's money paid for that organ. You weren't a martyr, you were a merchant. In our last life, I showered you with mansions, fast cars, and global trips. But your greed was bottomless. You were obsessed with replacing Gu Yanzi. You were the one who pushed me to drop out after we came back. I never would have stepped foot in that scam company if it weren't for you. If I'm going to jail, you're coming with me." She immediately looked toward the guards. "Officer, I'm reporting Jia Hao. He's a member of the fraud ring. He's the one who recruited me." Jia Hao's temper flared. "Shut your mouth, you gold digger. You actually believed you were going to be the nation's wealthiest woman just because I flattered you. You didn't have a cent to your name, yet you continued to. Acting like you're rich makes me feel nauseous. Give back my family's property deed and that ancestral jade pendant, or I will reveal every single crime you have done." They started hurling accusations at one another incessantly. Both were frantic to lessen their own sentences by exposing the other person's misdeeds. Gu Yanzi observed the whole spectacle in silence. The irony was palpable. The pair who had previously stabbed him in the back were tearing each other apart. Suddenly, Li Shimin turned her gaze toward him for the final time. "Yanzi, we were once a married couple. Please, I need your help. If you agree to assist me, I am certain my punishment can be lightened." Gu Yanzi's face stayed perfectly composed. "Are you aware of how many households have been ruined by scams? These are the results of your own actions. You must answer to the law." Following that day, Jia Hao vanished entirely. Word on the street was that he eventually approached the police covered in welts. He alleged that his father, a gambling addict, had sold him off to an affluent older woman. He pleaded with the authorities to save him. Investigation was launched by the police. However, the woman presented a valid marriage license. Jia Hao's father also verified the union. Ultimately, the matter was dismissed as a domestic conflict. Jia Hao was never heard from again. When Li Shiming was at last freed from incarceration, it coincided with the date of their class reunion. She arrived at the venue but lacked the courage to go inside. Instead, she stood outdoors, peering through the glass at everyone. Her gaze eventually landed on Lin Yi. Her eyes were brimming with envy, remorse, and a refusal to face the truth. In this current life, Lin Yi had risen to become Asia's wealthiest woman in just 3 years. In the former timeline, Li Shiming had required 15 years to achieve that status. Gu Yanxi's father had once wished for them to wed, yet Gu Yanxi had always viewed Lin Yi as an older sister. Lin Yi never pressured him. She merely respected his wishes, offered her support, and remained at his side. Regarding the twin brothers whom Gu Yanxi had funded years ago, they had finished their university studies. Even though they went to average schools, their work ethics surpassed everyone else's. Once they achieved success, they moved their grandparents into the city to provide them with a peaceful life. Despite being courted by numerous prestigious firms, both brothers opted to stay with Gu Yanxi. Their sense of appreciation never wavered. Observing the individuals surrounding him, Gu Yanxi smiled. In his past life, he had squandered his resources on those who turned against him. But in this iteration, he decided to invest in those truly worthy of compassion. With such faithful companions by his side, he felt confident that they would eventually construct a far more powerful business empire together.